Hello and welcome back to the show Life Starts Now. We are back and we are in our new place, so we are ready to rock and roll. Last week I was out of town, so we weren't able to get a podcast out then, but we're slowly getting moved in. This place looks like a complete mess right now, so it's getting there. It's getting there. We finally got some dishes we can eat without eating off the ground. So.
And we have a table now. Whoop, whoop. We have not had a kitchen table for 16 months because at our old place, we didn't have room for a kitchen table. We just had room for a couple bar stools that sat on our counter. Mm-hmm. So we have a kitchen table and we are excited about that.
Yeah.
Feels good to have a bigger place with some more space.
Definitely. And obviously by the title, you know what we're going to be talking about today. And we're going to teach you how to become debt-free and build wealth after you become debt-free, because the statistics say that the fastest way to build wealth is to first become debt-free. So we got a couple of steps that we're going to talk about. But before that, I just want to give a shout out to my buddy, Grant Rohach, for this leaving this hat at my place. I am by no way, shape, or form a Boston Red Sox fan, but they are in the World Series, and this hat fits my head the best out of all the ones I have. So I look pretty good walking up and down the street looking like a Red Sox fan, but that's all I know. So anyway, let's get into it.
Yes, so as he kind of said, we oftentimes talk about the step that we're on, or we kind of use that lingo, and basically we wanted to kind of cover the process, like what the heck are the steps? What are you guys talking about with the steps? And we've conquered this step, and we just wanted to kind of break that down for you guys and show you what that looks like. There's actually 7 of these, and these were not created by us. These were not created by our financial planner or our guy Travis, but we have gotten these from Dave Ramsey and all of his research and knowledge and years of experience and wisdom that comes with that. So we are big Dave Ramsey fans, mainly because, number one, he's very entertaining on his talk show, but more importantly, we've seen his plans work, and maybe there's other ways there. But we know that this works, and we've seen it work in our life, and so this is the story we have to share. And he's pretty much our guideline for all of this. He also comes with a biblical background, and so that helps as well, as we know he's leaning on the same truth that we rely on every day.
Yeah, and so that's kind of a lot of our friends that we knew who started this financial process. We had heard of Dave a while ago from our parents and just around the word, and we didn't really know, just didn't take it seriously or didn't want to look more into it. It was just kind of something that was in the back of our mind. And then if you've watched our debt-free, or how we paid off all of our debt episode, we talked about how it eventually came up, and we talked to our financial advisor, Travis, and all of that came around. We started listening to his podcast and all this kind of stuff, and we learned a lot from that, and that really got us fired up to start this process. So right now we are on baby step 3.
Yeah, and before you even go there,
okay.
So there's a couple of you that listened to our previous podcast and kind of recognized that these were Dave Ramsey's steps that we were following, and actually a couple of you reached out and asked, why aren't you, I don't know how I want to say this, why didn't you just throw it out there as like, this is Dave Ramsey's plan, this is what we're following? And sometimes, and he'll be the first to say this, he always says on his show, like, sometimes my name is like a cuss word in the house, because some people just, number one, they aren't ready to hear it, or they have a different path, or whatever the reason is. He has a strong personality, but we love it. And not only that, so we wanted to kind of wait, but the main reason why is because we wanted you to hear like our story from our perspective and not necessarily what someone else says or what someone else says to do. We really wanted to give you like the authentic of what we did. We took his steps and kind of ran with it. And how everyone implements his steps can be a little bit different. So.
Right. So if you're already tired of listening to us, he does have a book out that you can read that breaks down all the steps for you that you can follow. He has a class called Financial Peace University. More than likely, it's taught at a church close to you, if not your own church. And then he's got our favorite, his podcast show, which honestly, we have learned everything we know from that podcast show. We listen to that all the time. And he eventually, over time, has talked about every one of his steps and by answering questions that other people have about where they should be and things like that. So
yeah, I would recommend it. It's just on iTunes podcast, and he's super entertaining. And I would say we listened to it so hard one summer, like hours and hours, because we had a ton of car rides in the summer. We always do. And we have gotten to the point where when someone calls in with a question, we can almost exactly pinpoint the way that Dave is going to answer that question. So we know a lot about him and his show. We definitely reeled that around with us that summer.
Yeah, definitely. So we're going to talk about the first 3 steps because that's the first 3 that we've been through. There are 7 steps total. But since we haven't hit steps 4, 5, 6, and 7, we're going to hit that in another episode once we get there. Because we've been through the first 3 steps, we feel like we have a little bit more knowledge and more personal. Since we've been through them, we know exactly how to talk about them. So
the first one is really easy. It's
Very
baby
easy.
step 1, and
Very
it's to
easy.
have that base emergency fund. So this isn't like the big savings or whatever. This is just $1,000 set aside in a savings to get you through anything that may happen while you're trying to conquer baby step 2, which is getting out of debt. So it's the very first thing you do. Our personal experience with it, we sat down with Travis and he said, here's baby step 1. He already knew what we had in our savings and our checking in our wallet, whatever. And we had done a decent job of saving. I think we had like $3,000 or $4,000.
yeah,
dollars.
You had done.
Okay, yeah, sorry. I had been saving since I had had a job at age 15. And that's not a lot to show for that. But, I mean, I had something.
That's pretty terrible, actually.
But anyways,
I didn't have anything, but so I
we
can't
had
talk.
$3,000 or $4,000 just chilling in our savings. And then we had this $42,000 of debt. And basically, why are we holding that in our savings when we could pay off a huge chunk of debt right there? Not huge. It's not huge. But, I mean, it was something. And so we were all in from the get-go. So we literally left that meeting with Travis the first time. And this is the first time, guys, think about this. This is the first time we're sitting down and even seriously considering any of these baby steps. And we just went for it. So, like, if you're in this spot where you have a savings and you're kind of like, that makes me a little nervous, like, just go for it. If you have kids, maybe hold back a little bit more than $1,000. For us, it was just us 2. We knew that if a car broke down, we got $1,000. What can we get for that? Yeah. So we left that meeting and we took out every penny and left $1,000 in there, and then took that big chunk, threw it straight at our debt, and that really spiraled us into that process and really had our momentum going from day 1.
Yeah, it was really weird because we walked out of that meeting and we're like, man, like we were saving all this money and now it's gone. And then we look back at it and we're like, why were we saving the money in the first place? It makes no sense. What were we even saving it for when we had $42,000 worth of debt that's just sitting there ready to be paid off? Yeah. And we're putting the money in our savings account instead of trying to pay that off. At first it was weird. It didn't make sense that we would pay it off. And then now that we've thought about it and been through what we've been through, it was weird that we actually didn't do that in the first place, and we actually started a savings. So that is baby step one, $1,000 emergency fund. That will cover you for almost anything, unless there is just an absolute freak thing. And this is so you don't have to go into debt for emergencies. Don't use a credit card. Don't do that. It's just going to add more stress to your life. Things like that. So that is baby step one. The very first thing you do, start with $1,000 in your savings account. Baby step two, this is just plain and simple, get out of debt. So this is the most important step in building your wealth. As I said earlier, the statistics show that the fastest way to build wealth is to first get out of debt. Once you are out of debt, you are good to go, and building wealth is a lot easier. So, anything else?
I guess I would just put in there, like, since this is a huge part of our life, we know that God calls us to not borrow money and to not owe people and to not owe debt collectors money. And so we knew that he wanted us to be free of this, and that that was what we believed in, but we had never really took action on that. And so the freedom that you feel when you're done is definitely worth it and life-giving, and I can see why it was never in God's plan or purpose for us to be in debt, or any of us for that matter.
Right. The cool thing about that is that the Lord wants you to take care of yourself first. Get your debt done, and then from there, once you've been smart with your money, you can give, and you can build your wealth, and then you can just continue to give. But first, before you can give, you got to make sure that you can take care of yourself and get yourself out of debt, so you can have that freedom to be able to give.
Yeah, and you can have the most generous heart in the world, but if you have a problem controlling your money, you can't even act on that. And that generosity is such a gift from God that you're not fulfilling your full potential if you are holding back because you don't have the money, because you haven't gotten things together and figured out how you can have the money to give to people. When you are out of debt, most people have a $200-300 car payment a month, and there's one. We never again in our lives will have a $200 or $300 car payment every month. And so what can we do with that money every month? That's the fun part about it once you do get out of debt.
Yeah. And you've definitely got to read Dave's books, because there was one message in there that really hit home for me. And it was about, I think the average car payment for somebody living in America is about $500 a month. And so... yeah.
Is that like a household or one car?
I don't know.
Oh, I'm just curious.
I don't know. Anyway, if you can take that $500 and put it into a stock growth mutual fund that gains 12% a year from ages 35 to ages 65, by the end of that you will have a little over $5 million, which to me was absolutely insane. And then after that he said, I really hope you enjoy your car, because it doesn't cost you $40,000. It costs you around $5 million if you're not smart with your money. So that to me was really huge and made me think, wow, I really want to secure my future by sacrificing and being disciplined in the now.
The short term.
Yeah, in the short term. And by getting out of debt, that's how you start doing that.
Yeah, absolutely. And if anything else, like if you're not going to do it for yourself, fine, but do it for your family. Do it for your future family. Like, we're thinking of our future family, and how can we teach our kids to handle money and to be free with their finances if we're not going to have that as an example for them, or we're not going to know how to do it ourselves. So if anything, learn for that and do it for that, because you can definitely change your entire family going forward just by being debt free and setting that example, but then also having the wealth to kind of teach them along their way as well.
Yeah, and it's such a taboo thing to talk about. And we live in a world where credit is so good and everybody wants to have credit and all this. Everybody enjoys being in debt so they can get the nicer cars and the nicer houses and things like that. But it's such a great way to be able to not even just tell your kids, but to be able to show them that just because we don't have the nicest car in the neighborhood doesn't mean that we don't have money, one, and doesn't mean that our money isn't going to something a little better than having, say, a nice car or whatever. The coolest thing to make, yourself look good. So,
yeah, I agree.
Yep, definitely. And so a couple steps, I think a couple little things to think about when you are going out of debt. It's a lot of sacrifice. You've got to want to do it, one. And I mean, it's going to be a grind. Depending on how hard you go, it can take you a while if you want. But if you want to get out of it fast, it's going to be an absolute grind, and it's going to suck for an entire year. It's going to seem like nothing, or however long it takes you. It's going to seem like nothing is happening. It's going to seem like you're working really hard, making all this money, and then it's just going to disappear. So just know that going into it, that you've got to go at it intense, and just know that it's going to be a tough time. You got to be very disciplined, but it will pay off in the future.
Yeah, and 2 quick things that helped us was, number 1, staying connected to his podcast, because it's full of people in our situation calling in, giving us inspiration. A lot of them were in way worse positions than we were.
It sounds bad, but it made us feel really good when people called in and said, hey, we have $200,000 worth of student loan debt. And we're like, whew.
And we owe $70,000
doesn't sound, 42 doesn't sound near as bad. So
yeah. And not only that, they have a lot of cool stories of people making it and getting out of the debt. And they had way more debt than we did. And they had kids and they had whatever going against them. And they did it. And we're like, okay, if they can do it, we can do it. Like, come on.
Yep.
And then the second thing, so stay connected to the podcast when you need inspiration. That's literally what I would do if I was feeling like this is getting so long. I would turn on the podcast. But also, like, don't keep it to yourself. Share out with people your goals and what you're doing, and maybe you're not public about it. I feel like we were pretty open to talk about it with pretty much anyone that asked us, but tell a close family member or a close friend that's going to help hold you to it. The people that you spend your most time with, the way they are spending their money will be the way that you spend your money, unless you A, inform them about it, or B, pretty much just inform them about it, because people are going to wonder why can't you go out to eat every time I ask you, or why are you guys splitting a meal? You're a grown man, and stuff like that. So if you have people on board with you, you're much more likely to succeed. So
you saying grown men don't split meals?
Well, not you.
That's true. The only meal I split is hers on top of mine. So
yeah.
But now I don't have to split a meal, so which is great. Good feeling.
And then if you want more specifics of like what our story was with like numbers and steps broken down even further, go back to like our second episode, I think.
Yeah, I'll put that into the notes and the description in the video, and you guys can go check that out. a lot of detail we talked about. Yep. Yeah. How sucky it was and what we did in the
how we got through it.
Yeah, yep, exactly. And another thing for a tip is to start with your lowest debt first. No matter the interest rate, it's not going to matter near enough, because what it does is it gives you momentum. Once you start seeing these debts disappear, you get all excited about it and you get pumped and you just want to work harder and you want to get it done faster. And so that is just a little tip. So once you win your first debt, it's just going to the snowball effect you into your second and third and fourth. And then as those disappear, you get a lot more excited and it feels a lot better. So.
Yeah, and it feels good with those small wins, and like people are proud of you when these things happen. I mean, we had a car loan with my grandparents, which we were lucky. They sold us their car, and the loan was just through them. It wasn't through a bank. So interest rate was like nothing. And the car loan was like $12,000, I think. which is obviously a lot smaller than our student loans. So we went after that one first. And we had like a contract written up with them and signed, and it was like $250 or $200 a month for the next 5 years. And we had signed that, and we were like, yeah, like that's what we'll do. And then soon enough, we're like sending them these like $500,
the $3,500.
Yeah, there was one check we sent them
month.
that was like $3,500. That was 1 month. It was not every month.
Sorry.
We would do like anywhere from $400 to our biggest check to them was like $3,500 one month. And I don't know what their reaction was when they opened those. I wish I would have had a camera attached. But
yeah, seriously.
They were like, "Are you sure? Like, are you sure you want it? It's
if
okay. Like, we're willing to wait." But
like, nope, trust us. We want this out of
here.
here.
Yep. See you later.
Yeah. The other thing with that though is family is a little bit different when you're borrowing it from them, because even if it's not true, you do feel a little bit like if you're hanging out with them and then you talk about going out to eat every night, and then you just feel like they're definitely like, okay, you're going out to eat every night, but then you're only giving us whatever $200 a month for the car. So, and
that's not how my grandparents were or ever would be, but that's a lot of what Dave talks about with the connection with debts owed to family. Sometimes people think, oh, well, that doesn't matter as much, like, but it actually mattered more to us because we as independent adults who were married didn't want to have that kind of, I don't know, dependence, I guess, still on people that we love in our life.
Right.
So, sorry, we're pretty passionate about baby step 2, obviously. But let's move on to baby step 3.
Sweet. Our current baby step, and we will be done with this baby step after this month. And so what baby step 3 is adding on to your baby step 1, which is your $1,000 emergency fund. And this is 3 to 6 months of living. So you need to budget and see how much you spend each month to live. Now this is like, what can I sacrifice to survive each month? And then you take that number, times it by 3 to 6 months. Whatever you want. If you're more comfortable with 6 months, that's fine. We've done about
basically 3 or 4.
Yeah, we're pretty close to 4. We feel pretty confident in not, and we could probably sacrifice to drop that number down a little bit if anything were to happen.
Yeah, well, you think about if a real emergency happened, like you wouldn't be luxury living and going to Cancun and spending whatever at TJ Maxx like I may have done last night, but in the budget, of course.
Right.
And you wouldn't be doing any of that if you were in a true emergency and you both lost your jobs. And what would we actually need to pay for to live? That's kind of what you're basing that off of. That's what we chose to do. You could do it differently. But I really want to go back to Cole's first point, which he said, look at your budget. If you're not on a budget, you're making a huge mistake.
You're screwed.
And don't be like me, because when I said I was quote unquote on a budget, that means I'm totally a numbers geek, so I love Excel spreadsheets and numbers. But I created a budget, and I had a budget that I could pull out and show someone and pretty much BS my way through, for a lack of a better term. Sorry. But did that mean I was following it? No. Was I going in and putting in what we actually ended up spending? No. So technically, you're not on a budget if that's you. You need to get on a budget, create it, and then follow through with it every single month. Non-negotiable.
Yes. Yep. You're basically screwed if you don't have a budget. So get on that, because that is the most important thing. That is the one thing. I know Dave Ramsey did a study, and that's the one thing that all millionaires have in common is they're all on a budget. That's the most common thing between all of them. So, and so this will cover basically anything. Both lose your job. You have 3 to 6 months to do something about it, get something. So your income, your car breaks down, you can't do anything about it. You can buy a whatever in your emergency fund. And then if an emergency like that happens, then you take the money out of your emergency fund, and then you just refund it back to the 3 to 6 months.
Yeah, halt whatever step you're on, fill it back up, and then move on.
Yep. For example, when we were in New Zealand and I lost my buddy's drone, we had to take that out of our emergency fund, and then at the end of the month, we slowly refilled it to what we had. And so that's what it's there for. So again, you don't have to go through, or don't have to go in debt to get an emergency, because that's just going to put some more stress on your life, trying to pay that off. And again, you add this to your $1,000 emergency fund. So this goes on top of it. You no longer, that's not a separate thing. That is a part of your baby step 3. So from there, from your 1,000, you just continue to add to that, to however much you want. And so, yeah.
Take note of what it's called. It's an emergency fund. So be strict with yourself. Don't pull it out of there because you want, this is a prime example. So, for example, we really need a new couch, you guys. We were living with the couch that I've used all through college, which was just not.
It was nasty.
It was not okay anymore. And so we're like, we're not even going to bring that to the new place. But now we have no couch. We have 6 people coming to stay with us this weekend. And we're like, you know what? We are not dipping into our emergency fund to get a couch. That's not an emergency. And instead, we're going to wait. And even though we could technically afford that right now with our savings, November 1st, sure, we'll get it then because we're going to put it in the budget.
Yeah. So if I didn't have my beautiful wife here, I would have tapped into that emergency fund before. I make a lot of excuses on what is an emergency and what isn't an emergency. So like a new TV would be an emergency, and a couch would be an emergency. And
he's lucky he's got me. That's
right. A lot of things would be an emergency. So anyway,
basically it's a habit. So if you're going to start taking small things from that, you're going to keep doing it. And so unless you just cut it and say, this is an emergency, this is not.
Yes.
You're going to want to be disciplined in that, because your mind and everything will get more lax as you go.
Right.
So an emergency fund is for an emergency.
Yes. Now that is step 3, and that we are just going to finish that up. So we have not hit step 4, 5, 6, and 7 yet.
Yep. And
we will be talking to Travis after this step to figure out how to invest 15% of, because I have to do my own Roth IRA. I don't really have a business thing to put into that.
Yeah. Step 4 is invest 15% of your household income into retirement funds. And we won't go into which ones we recommend yet, because we have no idea what we're talking about there.
Idea. Then step 5 is save for your children's college fund. Don't really have to do that.
Nope. Not necessary yet.
Not necessary until you actually have a child. 18
years is plenty of time to save for a kid's college.
Yep. Yep. Then step 6 is pay off your home. So just like step 2, get out of debt. You can either pay your mortgage monthly, 15-year, or you can pay extra and get that paid off as fast as you can. Either way is fine. Yep. And then 7 is build wealth and give.
The fun step.
The fun step. So.
And obviously these aren't all quick,
Right. These are going to take some time. It's been a year and a half, 2 years, and we're almost on step 4. So somewhere around there.
Year and a half.
Yeah. Anyway, that is that. And once we hit step 4, 5, 6, and 7, we'll do another video talking more in detail about those and what we've done. But the book for Dave Ramsey is Total Money Makeover. If you want to check that out, please do. I've had people read it in a day and they're just motivated. It's awesome. Good stuff. His podcast, Dave Ramsey Show, check that out as well. If you have any questions, we've had a couple people ask us questions. We've also had people just tell us we're flat out wrong. We love that too, because then it starts a conversation with us. And we'd love to hear your opinions on what works for you and what doesn't. So, if this added value to your life, please leave a like, comment, subscribe, whatever. It helps us get known to other people. And again, feel free to reach out with anything, any questions you have. We'd love to talk it over. And so thanks again this week for hanging out with us.
Yeah, thanks guys.
Yep, so we'll see you next week.
Have a great week.
Bye.